And now, here is your host, business coach Bruce Eckfeldt.
Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling-up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's ECKFELDT.com/thrive.
Welcome, everyone. This is Scaling Up Services. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. And our guest today is Julie Garrison. She is president at Tapuz, which is a staffing agency. We're going to learn a little bit more about the business that Julie has put together in helping companies find staff for events, for various needs that they have. We're going to talk about the business, how it's evolved, how she's working it today, her ability to work in multiple locations. So we're going to talk a little bit about what she's been able to achieve in terms of having grown the business and managed the business and get involved in some other businesses. I think that's a goal for a lot of people listening to this program, is how do they become a little less geographically tied to everything going on in the business, and how do they get involved in other ventures as they see opportunity to make life both interesting and hopefully profitable and expand their entrepreneurial worlds. With that, Julie, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So always a pleasure. And actually, full disclosure, Julie and I have known each other for a while, and we've worked together in various capacities over the years. So I know a little bit about the business and a little bit about her background, and I'm excited to talk about this. But why don't we start with just kind of how you just got into this? You've been running Tapuz for 4 or 5 years now. I can't remember exactly when you started, but what were you doing before and how did this come up? I'm always curious how people start businesses and why they start businesses, but how did it work for you?
Sure. So I sort of convoluted story, but essentially I grew up in Arizona, graduated with a theater degree, did the old move to New York thing to pursue acting, and that led me to sort of the hospitality path of serving, bartending, all of that. Sort of, I got tired of not having health insurance and all those things. And I was like, I need a real job, and was able to sort of partner in on a restaurant venture with a group I had been working with. And that restaurant venture, we quickly realized was not a good restaurant, but it had some potential to be a really good event space, which I really didn't know anything about at the time. But as we know, real estate in New York City is hard to come by. Yeah. Big real estate. So we ended up just sort of having the business initially come to us, and we had to create this messy influx of new business into, a viable, growing business. So then essentially started an event space in Midtown Manhattan. We then launched a catering company that did work throughout the tri-state area as well as at that event space. And I did that for approximately 10 years or so. And so then I became sort of an expert in the event field, but, the hard way. And
the school of hard knocks, as we like to say.
Yeah. And so then I had a lot of staffing issues during that time. We did it all internally. It's its own whole ball game to hire as many people as you need, train them, retain them, etc. And then we outsourced it a handful of times to other outside companies because we didn't want to deal with it. And that was never really successful. So eventually when those businesses were sort of coming to rightful close with leases and such as that sort of thing. And I had been heavy into production of events for 10 years at this point. So I was tired. Yeah. A lot of really early mornings, really late nights, all the time. I mean, constant, So this point I was like, you know what? I like the staffing element of it. I like to find the talent, coach the talent, keep them employed. And I personally and selfishly don't have to be the one producing the event on site. So I sort of segued into that, and that became hospitality-based staffing agency per se in the tri-state area. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got it. Well, and I like the kind of new business born of needs that you're seeing and problems that are being unserved or unmet, by the industry. And then, deciding that that's going to be the next step is really, okay, let's build a business around this problem. A pretty sort of classic story in terms of how people got into business. And also, right. I think a lot of people end up kind of getting into business sideways. They see a need, they create a business, and before they know it, they've got a going concern that they can actually leverage. So I guess in terms of...
My short answer is always by accident. So
exactly. Mm-hmm. I guess any kind of bigger picture learnings, either about, yourself or about the process of becoming an entrepreneur through that. And, having been both on the kind of the employee side or the being part of a team versus leading a company, things that you've learned or things that you've seen as different, between those different roles? Yeah,
for sure. It's interesting you ask that because a lot of people, when they talk to me about this, they think that I'm going to be like, go into business for yourself, like hardcore.
Yeah, rah.
And I'm never like that because it's hard. It is not easy. The buck stops with you. You're the one that's ultimately responsible for everything. You don't get to clock out. Those are the sort of negatives. Not that I need to classify it as positive and negative, but it's challenging. It was easier for me to make that leap when I did because I was young and I had nothing going on and nothing to lose. So that was an easy choice at that point in my life. At other stages in my life, I might not have made that same decision. So I've seen other people jump into the entrepreneurial path at other points in their life, and it scares me a little bit. However, now that I've been doing it for so long, it would probably be very difficult for me to step into a traditional role of employment because I have freedom of schedule and choice of what I'm doing when I'm doing it. And that's really, to me, the reason that I continue to do it. That it's sort of, something that a lot of people never get to do for their entire working life, which is most of their life. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I think it does. And I think the kind of the sober assessment of what it's like to start a business and be a founder and ultimately be a CEO is a good one because I think I always say you have to be a little delusional to start a business, right? Because the statistics, the data, the success rate is so poor on average that it's not actually a rational decision, right? You almost need to be irrational, a little delusional to want to get into it. But and I think kind of acknowledging that doing it at different times of your life, both in terms of kind of your age and your ability to kind of tolerate certain physical and schedule
factor, exactly.
Yeah, and what you have at risk. I think that is a really fascinating one. Is that when you're younger and you can take bigger risks in many respects. It is harder when you get older, right? You've got more commitments. You've got more people reliant upon you. More people that would be affected if things don't go well. So I think it's an important one to acknowledge.
Less time to earn money later. The whole 9 yards. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, the one thing that's curious or that I find interesting in your case is one of the things I hear people complain a lot about in service-based businesses is having to manage people. Because there's the idea that business would be much easier without employees and without clients, right? Because then I wouldn't have to deal with people. You are just like in the people business.
I'm in like a gigantic Olympic-sized pool of people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you think allows you or has served you well in terms of being able to manage that kind of business that is so people intensive and so dynamic around the people intensive sort of aspect of the business? What do you think gives you the tools or allows you to be successful in terms of, either how you think or your skills or your approach, your mindset? Give me a little insights on that.
That's a good question. I would say off the top of my head that I think you have to have the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, but really, not like hypothetically like, oh, well, I could sort of maybe see their point. I think you have to really be able to say, you know what, this is probably how this person is thinking or feeling, and this is why, and be able to really be empathetic to other people because there's so many situations that come up with staff and clients and the combination of them. And so it's not just, you can't just decide this is the way it is and that's how it works. It's not that simple. So you have to then take everybody's their point of view and try to merge those and come to some type of, medium. So I would say, like off the top of my head, that's probably part of it. So I'm also, training my management staff a lot. It's a really fine line. You have to have so many policies in place, and you have to have communicated those policies, and you have to fall back on them. That's the only way you can deal with, how you operate, how you pay, how you discipline, how you hire, how you fire, all those things. So you have to have those, but you're also dealing with human beings. And so there's a whole lot of reasonable flexibility that has to be involved for all of those, from dealing with clients to staff, because you're dealing with people. And so it's not black and white. It's not a product, it's all sort of in a gray area.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I think that whole idea of putting yourself in other people's shoes, or really, really working to understand what is going on for this person. Not that I need to, accept their position or condone a certain behavior or agree with them necessarily, but you need to start with a really true, honest understanding of where are they coming from, what position are they in that is causing them to either want this or do this or say this. And I think until you really do that work and you really get clear on that, it's going to be hard to come up with an effective solution. Again, not that you need to agree with everything. Agreement is not.
Sometimes you don't, but you have to. Even if it changes just how you're communicating from being able to understand what they're doing, and then adjusting your communication, still delivering the same message, but in a different way. Yeah.
And I like the policy stuff too, is that you get clear on what are your expectations, what are the rules of the road for you and your organization, and communicating that early and clearly, and getting agreement up front, so you don't have to do that. All right, well, now we have a situation, and now I have to kind of create a policy retroactively, and that's always a nightmare. I mean, I guess what have you learned about that process in terms of what policy to put in place? Where do you really kind of focus? Where do you let things be a little looser? What's been the strategy in developing good kind of rules of the road in terms of creating an effective organization that way?
I would say for us, it's also was a little bit of a learning process to get to that point, because like you said, a lot of it is something happens and there's your policy, not all of it, the basics, but you're like, oh, I never thought this would happen, especially when dealing with people. It happened. Okay, what's our immediate policy moving forward? So there was definitely that sort of thing in the beginning. I think we have a ton of policies with both our clients and our staff. I think a key part is communicating them as effectively as possible to a normal degree. So for us, I think with the staff in particular, like we have a online onboarding system. We have a multi-fold interview process. And then once they come on, we have an online onboarding system, and they're exposed to all of our paperwork and all of these policies right there. And they're electronically signing them right there. We're then sharing those documents with them inevitably throughout their employment, like through a shared system. So they always have access to them, but then they come in for an actual training, a paid training, and we basically are reading / it's sort of an interactive to some degree training session, the same things. And we start off by saying, you've already been exposed to this, you've already signed this, but now we're going to talk about it again. So then we go through this whole process and talk about it. And then we still have to remind and highlight things continually. So that's not enough, what I just said. You still have to then go, okay, there's this pattern, we see this is happening, whatever it is. People are late. People are doing X, Y, Z. So then we're like, all right, let's do a company memo. Is that going to work? If it doesn't work, it means we don't have an effective plan in place. So then one of our core values is being open to continual improvement. So if something's not working, we are going to change our policies to try to fix it. So that might mean, we're going to have a different policy in terms of, reprimand for being tardy. I'm just making this particular one up. And then we have to update all the documents, re-communicate that with all the staff, and then we're enforcing that. And then the sort of touching base, we try to mix that up too. So it's not just like a memo. We might do a newsletter. We might send a push notification through our scheduling platform. Sometimes it's light in tone and like, hey, here's a friendly reminder, happy Valentine's Day, or, whatever. Yep. And sometimes it's it's not. Sometimes it's like, this is becoming a problem, this is severe, blah, blah, blah. And then lastly, when those policies are broken, we then have reminders specifically at that point, which could be a friendly reminder depending on the situation, or it could be up to termination. So then we're saying, hey, XYZ, this happened, da, 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 and you had this, you signed it, we talked about it, you've been reminded about it, this is what happened. Yeah. So I think maybe that's the key for us, is to make sure it's delivered in multiple ways and continuously. To some degree, if you send too much information, nobody's going to read anything you're sending. So you have to be sort of careful about how often it's happening.
Well, and I think it's true. I mean, one of my favorite phrases is the challenge with communication is the illusion that it's occurred, right? So just because you send a link, just because you've had someone sign something, it means you can kind of hold them accountable for the information, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they actually know the information. So I think that strategy of having multiple opportunities or multiple communication modes and technologies, and having you read the paper, you watch the video, we come in and you talk about it, you listen to the audio, just knowing that people learn things different ways or communicate differently, and giving them multiple kind of modalities of communication, and then hitting it multiple times, right? Just because you said it once doesn't mean that they're going to get it, right? Sometimes you need to, I think the data or someone has a thing, it takes 6 times. You need to say something 6 times before people really understand.
Yeah.
And then choosing, right? And knowing that, if I give them 248 pieces of information all at once, the chances are they're not going to remember any of it. Whereas if I can highlight a couple of things at a time and really get them to focus, I'm probably going to get more effectiveness.
100%.
One thing you mentioned there too, which I thought was interesting, and I talk a lot about this with clients, is the problem I see is a lot of people go, a lot of managers, a lot of executives go from 0 to 60 very quickly, meaning that they finally something happens and they trigger and they get into doing a PIP or a personal improvement plan, or to put people on warnings all of a sudden, and people get kind of shocked. They're like, well, I didn't know this was an issue. I didn't say anything before. And the fact is they don't. A lot of executives, a lot of managers just kind of wait and wait and wait, and it builds up, and they snap and they go into a very kind of extreme mode, instead of really just kind of, hey, you know what, I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback, or I noticed this thing happened. I want to make sure this isn't a problem. And they just keep it casual in the beginning and then kind of slowly escalate it over time. You mentioned that a little bit, that there's this kind of like, where are we in the cycle? And is this just a friendly reminder, or is this, look, you're either terminated, or, if this happens again, you're going to be terminated. How have you kind of learned, or what is the systems you've kind of put in place to be able to do that kind of early course correction, so you'd have less of those kind of big, dramatic kind of conversations that you need to have when something's kind of escalated to that point?
Another great point. I think for us, it's tracking what's going on. So it's, we know how many times somebody has done some type of infraction. So we're tracking that through a software program. So my management team is awesome, and they have good judgment, and they've been with me a long time. And so we know when something's happening, the first thing we're doing is we're looking at that system and we're saying, okay, this is so-and-so, this is what's going on. If it's the first time and it's not a serious issue, or it's the second time and they've been employed with us for a year and it's not a big deal, we're not going to probably say to them beyond acknowledging that it happened, to be honest. So we're going to keep it friendly and noted, whatever, we hope something is, if feeling better, whatever's going on. See you soon. So we're not going to be making anyone feel bad at that point. We're also looking at things like, how often have they been working with us? What kind of reviews are they getting? So we're working our judgment in terms of is this something that needs follow-up. So then same thing, we now know when there's been multiple offenses, it's starting to become a pattern, or maybe this is the 5th time this has happened in 5 months, and that looks like the start of a pattern. So then we're going to give a warning. And at that point, it should be probably neutral, again, depending on the offense. But, we'll be like, hey, this is it. Again, because we have it recorded, we're going to say these things happen on this date. Just, let you know, this is our policy, blah, blah, blah. So try to please change this behavior, et cetera, not that exact verbiage, and keep it light. And then it's pretty simple. At that point, they've been warned. We might have treated as as a final warning, depending on the infraction. So we're still giving people chances to improve. And then at that point, termination is just sort of an automated type of feel, because if they do it again, they've seen everything. We've given them a chance. We've given them a warning. So at that point, it's really, hey, sorry. We don't say sorry. We say, hey, this is the last communication we had per our policies, best of luck. So I guess for us, it's tracking it so that we can look and gauge what's an appropriate response for this person and this circumstance.
Yeah. Well, I like that idea of, no surprises, right? Like when you get to the point of having to terminate somebody, they should know before you do that they're being terminated, because they knew the rules and they knew what happened, and it should be obvious and prepared and expected at that point. I think that's a good kind of rule, or a good strategy, or a good rule.
And then to clarify, of course, like there's some things that are more severe than others that you don't have that luxury of having that slow buildup, and then you have to throw in this is a policy, this is a severe offense, etc.
Criminal offense. Yeah, and I think all of that becomes so much easier, because what the fact is, this stuff's going to happen, right? Like even the best organizations, these are things that come up, and you need to deal with it. But if you've got good policies in place that have been effectively communicated and maintained and enforced over time, this becomes almost just a system that executes itself. You avoid a lot of the drama. Well, while the conversations can be dramatic, the process does not have to be dramatic. So interesting. So to talk to us a little bit about, from a strategy point of view, how you've kind of evolved, and I'm always curious how people have kind of figured out who their best customers, or in your case, kind of the best types of events, why they're the best type of events, like what you end up looking for, and why it's a good type of situation, and what projects not to do over the years.
Oh, so many good questions, Bruce. So I would say that we have a pretty broad range of different types of clients working in hospitality realm and events, and it's not all so eventy. Some of it is, like a pop-up shop, or, registration staff for a concert venue. So it's like a broad spectrum. What I have found is a good match for our clients with us. They have to have a similar philosophy and attitude that myself, the company, and the management team has, in terms of realizing that we are dealing with people. They have to have the same expectations that we can deliver. So we're very clear about what we can deliver and how we can deliver it. And there's a lot of people that totally get it. They understand it, and that's what they need. And so we're delivering them the product that they need. And then there are some people that really actually need a different product. So I've sort of, again, the hard way, learned how to initially, when, talking with a client, or when my team's talking with a new client, clearly communicating like what it is that we do and how we do it. And if somebody is saying certain things, we might direct them in a different direction, because it's not their expectation. So like if somebody wants a really very curated staffing experience, and they're like, we want XYZ, like they're telling you from A to Z what they want their people to say, do, be, where, the whole 9 yards, then they want someone on site, a management person on site every single shift. That's just one example. That's not really what we do. We could do it, but that's a whole special project. It's not send already vetted temp staff that wears our dress code and follows our policy. So what they really want is they want a dedicated HR manager to hire their own staff, train their staff, and manage their staff on site every day. So they really want an internal structure and an internal system for their staff. They just don't want to hire that person to do it. So I'll literally tell people that nicely, and I'll say, so what you're doing, I'm like, we could do that. We could have a dedicated HR person that's going to just work for you and do that. But otherwise, if you just are going to order our staff, I'm doing air quotes, you're going to get great staff. This is what the staff's going to be, but you're going to have a lot of them. They're there's a very large roster to fulfill all our needs. You can send feedback. You can say who you want to see again and who not. We can't guarantee all of their availability for you. Yep. Our managers are not going to be on site for larger events. They'll be there checking staff in. If you want a event captain to manage the event, you can order that through us, but it's not going to be me or my, hiring manager.
Yeah.
So clearly sort of just explaining what it is we do. And if something's outside of that, we could customize it. But what I found is usually people don't want that. They want what I'm saying. And then I'll be like, well, here's a headhunter that I know. Why don't you hire yourself, an HR manager?
Yeah.
So kind of guiding them to what they need, if that answers your question.
No, it does. I think it's a good strategy. I think something that it sometimes takes people a while to learn, which is, you can't do everything, or you can try.
Right.
But it's kind of like you can do anything you want, just not everything you want. And getting good at getting clear on what your best customer, best project, best client is, and really focusing on that. And then, everyone else that comes to you, either figuring out how to convert them into the best customer, right? In terms of, educating them and explaining to them why your way of doing things is really going to be a better solution for them because of what they ultimately want, or the complexities around trying to do it themselves or doing it an alternate way.
Exactly. And cost.
Cost, risk, drama,
exactly.
and then having some good referral partners. I do this a lot as a coach when someone comes to me and it's just not a great fit for me, but I may know someone who actually is a great fit, and I'll do referrals. Because at the end of the day, you want to be a solution provider, even if it's not you. Giving them a solution to their problems is going to increase the likelihood that they recommend you to other people, that when they have a future need that is more in line with what you need, that they're going to call you back. And for the people that you're referring to, it ends up creating a nice referral network, right? So that you get the right clients to the right people and vice versa. So you're going to get referrals coming the other way when they have, when they see opportunities that are a better fit for you. So, good strategies.
Absolutely.
So one last question I wanted to do on this one is, I know that, most of your business now is in the tri-state area around New York City, but you're able to spend some time outside of New York City on a regular basis. And I know a lot of people who run service companies who are shackled, shall we say, to their operations. And the whole idea of even taking a weekend away can be kind of a dream to folks. I guess, what have you done in terms of the business, how you've operated it, managed it, put the right people in place so that you can take extended periods of time away from New York City and not have the business, falter or deteriorate? What has that process been like for you? What have you learned?
I've learned so much from it. I think it's actually the first thing, when you're asking me this, the first thing I was thinking of was that I actually feel that the business runs better since I have spent more time away.
Funny how that works.
And it's because I'm still very much in the know, because I talk to my management team daily, multiple times, email, phone calls, video calls, you name it. So I'm part of it, but they're the ones that are doing the work, and they're a great team, and they wouldn't have their roles if they weren't doing a stellar job, and I trust them to do it. So they do it. They like the responsibility, they like the trust, but again, there's processes in place, a lot of communication. So they're constantly touching base with me in an organized fashion, but they're the ones that are doing the work. If additional work is needed, then it means I need to hire another management team member and or rearrange their current roles and positions, because I really think the lead of a company, per se, however you want to define that, shouldn't be down in the daily grind. That shouldn't be their role. Their role should be to, have a forward vision for the company and manage the management team members, ideally. Yeah. Some people disagree with that. Some people are like, old school, and they want to be on the ground, and there's definitely something to be said for that. But for me, I have found that it runs better when I'm not actually there.
Mm-hmm.
When I am in the office, I think that they're annoyed with me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like they like seeing me for a little bit and then they're like, okay, can I just do my job? Like, why are, we had our meeting. I have my project. Like, I don't need you looking over my shoulder, like repeatedly telling me the same thing. So I find that it's been cool to see that. And I think a large part of how I was able to do it is I just did it. And then I realized what I just said to you. So then it was like, oh, okay, this is doable. Yeah.
No, and I think it's a good one. The one thing I always say is if you're around too much, the problems find you, right? And I think by getting out of the office and not actually being available 24/7 means that other people need to deal with the problems. And, quite often they can deal with it just as well, if not better than you can. So there's a proximity factor to this. Julie, this has been great. If people want to find out more about you, about the staffing business, what's the best way to get more information?
I would go to the website, which is Tapuz, TAPUZ, staffing.com. And a lot of info's up there.
Great. I'll make sure that.
Bruce.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll have the link in the show notes. People can click through and get that. But I appreciate the time. It's fun to have some time to catch up and get into the business in a little more detail. And congratulations on your success and continued growth. I'm looking forward to seeing how the coming years. Yeah.
Last note, you have helped me too. I have to throw that in there. A lot of good advice and ideas and thoughts definitely push me and this company forward. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. That's my job. So I'm glad things are working out well, and I look forward to hearing how things go in the future. So thanks.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Scaling Up Services with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at scalingupservices.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at scalingupservices.com/newsletter.